Did Henry Lau's team create unintentional symbolism? A deep dive into Enjoy the Show by Henry Lau. Henry Lau is an undeniable visual and musical powerhouse. He's a millennial who bridges the Canadian music scene, the South Korean K-pop idol system, and the global pop market. And when you watch him play the violin, his classical virtuosity takes over. So when he dropped the highly anticipated global music video for his track Enjoy the Show, fans were understandably ecstatic. But for Black American viewers and anyone familiar with the actual history of the American West, looking under the hood of this production reveals a disconnect in how cross-cultural art is executed. The video leans heavily into a Hollywood interpretation of an American honky-tonk, but it treats the era strictly as a superficial aesthetic. The lighting is pristine, the makeup is hypermodern, the extras filling out the background look like a contemporary European interpretation of a diverse crowd. It presents a high-fashion, sanitized version of historical glamping. This simulated version of the frontier stands in stark contrast to the historical reality. A true 1800s saloon was an environment of raw survival, where the inhabitants carried a sun-baked, rugged gravity that the pristine lighting of a music video can't replicate. To understand the weight of that environment, we have to look at the big three. American Western history is anchored by three distinct populations: indigenous, Black, and white cultures. These are the groups that physically and culturally forged the frontier. When an international production uses the American West strictly as a flat visual palette, it strips away the historical reality of land displacement and physical survival. It turns a heavy, complex history into a corporate pop playground. Take a close look at the video's costuming. The defining piece is a leather fringe jacket. The silhouette, the cut, and the utility of that fringe are direct products birthed by indigenous innovation. Yet the production treats this historical survival gear entirely as an avant-garde luxury fashion statement. There is zero actual indigenous representation on screen to anchor the garment to the people who created it. This structural omission stems from a process of pan-ethnic labeling. Millions of people from Mexico and Central America are the direct descendants of sovereign tribal nations like the Maya and Aztec. Yet they were funneled into broad Europeanized categories like Hispanic or Latino. This shift from original inhabitant to immigrant or minority had a specific legal function. By stripping away a specific tribal lineage, the power structure effectively neutralized sovereign land claims and resource rights, forcing populations to identify with the language of their colonizers rather than the land of their ancestors. Those descendants are still here. They carry the living legacy and the bloodlines of those ancient civilizations into the modern era, borrowing the aesthetic fruits of indigenous innovation while completely ignoring both their historical presence and their modern descendants, reduces a history of political erasure into an empty costume. This brings us to a pivotal directorial choice in the staging. Right at the 1 minute and 1 second mark, we see a specific moment where a Black performer is removed from the stage, giving the central spotlight completely over to Henry Lau's character. Later, at the end of the video, the production culminates in a full tap dance battle. While these choices were likely made just to raise the dramatic tension, they rely on an art form birthed out of absolute necessity. When enslaved Africans were stripped of their traditional drums by colonizers, they refused to let the rhythm die. They turned their feet and bodies into percussive instruments to survive. Tap evolved through a documented alliance. Marginalized Irish immigrants, who were also shut out by the ruling class at the time, shared spaces with Black Americans. Out of that shared displacement, the rigid, classical European step technique married the spontaneous, free-flowing soul of African rhythms. The video misses a massive historical opportunity here. In the early 1900s, early Chinese immigrants faced brutal racism and responded by building solidarity with Black Americans, establishing businesses together, and marrying into Black families. Instead of showcasing that deep historical solidarity, the production sets up a zero-sum corporate competition. By physically clearing a Black performer off the stage at 101 to frame technical pop styling and staging a tap dance battle at the end without context, it visually mimics structural displacement, sidelining the very lineage that built the art form. If you listen closely to the actual sonic production of the track, you hear a jarring contrast. It dresses up in a rugged rock outfit, but the vocal delivery is incredibly clean. It sounds exactly like the positive, encouraging anthems you'd hear on contemporary Christian radio. But underneath that heavily filtered corporate pop vocal, the entire engine of the track relies on complex polyrhythms and heavy syncopation to drive the energy forward. For Black Americans, rhythm is the ultimate sonic heirloom. when ancestors were systematically stripped of their original languages, their names, and their family lineages. The rhythm remained as an unbroken connection straight back to the continent of Africa. This syncopation functions as a living archive. It carries the weight of a people's resilience into every rhythmic hit, making it impossible to separate the sound from the history of survival that forged it. A lot of fans want to look at global pop music in a vacuum and forget the past. They want the aesthetic without the baggage, but history requires us to recognize the foundations we are building on. Every single time a global artist borrows heavy syncopation or polyrhythms to anchor a track, they're tapping directly into that sonic heirloom. And audiences have every right to stand up and demand that the artist acknowledges who actually built the stage they are performing on. None of this erases Henry Lau's massive individual talent. Breaking a global Asian pop star is an exciting milestone for the international music industry, and his pure musicianship deserves the spotlight. I want the song to succeed. I hope it gets picked up by the FIFA World Cup, the NBA, and fills massive global stadiums. But achieving that kind of global reach comes with cultural responsibility. Executing cross-cultural art successfully requires tact, grace, and an active acknowledgement of the history that supports your aesthetic. You cannot claim the rugged cool of the American West while erasing its indigenous descendants. You cannot sideline Black performers in an art form their ancestors invented for survival. And you cannot wear a marginalized history as a corporate costume. America is not a flat aesthetic palette. True global solidarity means stepping into the spotlight alongside the cultures that built the stage, rather than dancing over their erased history. Creators must be a little bit more sensitive to the unintentional symbolism that could alienate fans. Henry Lau and his production team worked really hard on this video, but they may have unintentionally played into symbolisms of division and not their intention of bringing people together. This is our take here on African Americans Anonymous. We would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And viva la FIFA, right?